What's up, everybody, and welcome to today's episode of Real Talk, Real Tips. We are here with Taylor Tucker and Assistant Director Nels Rodefeld. Today we'll be talking about paddlefish in the springtime. This is an episode brought to you by the Oklahoma Department of Wildlife. So thanks for coming on, and if y'all just give a brief introduction of Taylor and Nels, that'd be great.
My name's Taylor Tucker. I am a fisheries technician out of Blue River. I have my bachelor's degree in fisheries and wildlife science from Southeastern, and I'm currently working on my master's.
Okay. Hey, thanks. Nels Rodefeld, Assistant Director and longtime fisherman.
For sure. Nels, great to have you on today. So can you kind of give us a brief rundown of what you do in the department and kind of how you got there?
Yeah, appreciate the question there. So I spent most of my career in the communication and education division, and I worked on news releases, magazine, worked with our TV show folks over the years, and have served as the chief of communication and education for the last 15 years or so, before just recently, as of like last week, being promoted to assistant director. So look forward to serving the sportsmen and women in the state in that role, and continuing to support, of course, the amazing work that we do to try to share the story of the department and the story of our resources, our amazing fisheries and wildlife opportunities that we have here.
Awesome. Well, congrats on your promotion.
Yeah,
that's awesome. So we're very, very thankful to have you, and like we know you'll lead really well in the department. So, I know personally that you have a farm. Is there anything that you might like to share about your farm at home?
Sure, yeah, I appreciate that. And my wife and I live just outside Maud, kind of a small town southeast of Oklahoma City. I grew up on a farm. I grew up on a dairy farm, and we never really figured we would end up having a farm, but it worked out that way. We a number of years ago decided that we wanted to invest in property here in Oklahoma, where we made our home, and we wanted to do that because we wanted to do wildlife management, habitat work, and so we have ended up with a farm, and we do a lot of wildlife related activities on our farm, and
That's so fun to be able to watch your own property grow and stuff.
We could do a whole nother one if we were doing habitat management stuff
Yeah.
about the rewards of actually turning dirt, cutting trees, doing all the things that translate into making something better for deer or turkeys, stuff like that. But
Right. That's awesome. So we have this photo here of you as a young kid. Can you kind of describe to us this picture and just the background behind it?
yeah, it's just a picture I keep in my office. It's a reminder that I was fishing almost before I could walk. It sounds corny. My mother loves to tell a story about when I was real young, like 3. My grandparents had a place in the lake, and we would go to the lake, and to keep me occupied, they would put a life jacket on me and or tie me to the pier. They would give me a cane pole with a bobber and a hook, and then, according to her, they would pretend to put bait on the hook, and I would fish with the cane pole for hours and hours with no bait on it. And,
That's awesome.
and I kept coming back for more. That picture was, I think I was 4 or 5 at the time, but eventually they let me have bait, and I caught fish, and I love fish. Just ever since I had any memories, I just loved fishing and trying to catch fish and trying to figure out how to catch fish, and just for my whole life, really. And then I got a chance to come to work for the wildlife department, dream job, and communicate with people about fishing and why it's fun, what it can be rewarding to spend time outdoors, and then how to help them catch more fish, like
sure.
to do what we do. So
Sounds like a fulfilling career.
yeah, it has been, yeah. And it was great. I started in '94, and shortly, I was on for about 4 or 5 years, and had the opportunity at the time. Our fisheries crew was doing some extensive research on angler pressure and use of the paddlefish fishery at Grand Lake. And I went up to do a magazine article, and it was just crazy. We knew this at the time was a pretty localized fishery, but we wanted to do a story on it, and so I went up there and spent time with our fisheries people, and spent time with game wardens who were assisting with the krill counts and whatnot. And as somebody who had fished all their life, to see the fishery in action, it was amazing. It was crazy.
And is this what got you into paddle fishing?
Yeah, so that's where this goes, I guess. I did my first day of like taking notes and taking pictures, and got done with doing that, and I literally drove to the grocery store, called my wife, and I'm like, listen, I'm about to tap out our checking account. Like, this is, I mean, it's a true deal at the time. Well, it was thin, but I said, you won't even understand. I'll come home and show you. But I have to go to the bait shop. I'm going to buy a pole, a reel, and line. And enough, whatever leftover money I have after that, I'm going to get some hooks and weights. And I'm literally going to walk down to the city park, because we were in Miami at the city park, and it's still a famous place to bank fish. And
Right.
And that's what I did. I went to the bait shop, and here's how much money I have. Can you get me the best stuff I can get with these hooks? And walk down to the river. And of course, I had never fished for paddlefish, so I have no idea. I had to recruit somebody to even show me how to tie the hook on the line. You tie it a certain way to make sure that you're able to snag the fish. The paddlefish don't. You can't fish for them with lures and other common methods. It's snagging. So, and then like two or three casts in, I snagged one.
Oh, wow.
And it jumped out of the water and ran downstream, and I had to chase it downstream. And anyway, it was amazing. I had the chance to do a lot of fishing in my time in many different places. And when I was able to catch that first paddlefish, it came to me that this is like an Oklahoma marlin. Like I caught a striped marlin, and this was what I just did right here at Miami City Park. I mean, it was the same kind of feeling and the same kind of excitement, and so then we actually started out trying to do more stories focused on, this is an amazing resource, an amazing fishery.
Right.
And people should at least try it once to see if it's for them.
For sure.
And like, so my buddies, I took all my buddies the next year. That was almost the end of the run for that year. And the next year we went up there as soon as we heard that there was water moving and the fish were moving into the rivers. And I took some friends, and it was beyond incredible. We were in a boat that time, and the very first outing we had, we caught 50 paddlefish.
Oh,
You catch and release paddlefish, and we decided to come up with a gimmick for ourselves. We called it the 1 Ton Club. I don't know if you
That's
can
awesome.
see that.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
We
1 Ton
gotcha.
Club. And we made these shirts, and we were like, if we ever have a day where we catch a ton, 2,000 pounds of paddlefish, we'll give ourselves a shirt commemorate the trip and the experience. And
That's awesome.
that kind of snowballed into some other times that we took members of the press and
Yeah, I've
other
actually
people, and,
I've got a picture of you and Blake Shelton right here.
we talked Blake into coming more than once. He's been on a number of different trips.
Right.
And again, this is one of those deals where if you like to fish, I mean, if that's what you're into, but you've never tried the paddlefish, I mean, you owe it to yourself to give it a try, because it's unique, it's different, and it's amazing.
For sure.
It may not be everybody's cup of tea, but you should try it at least once. And And luckily now there's ways to learn about where to go and how to do it. There's also a lot of guides that have the guide business and industry has proliferated in Oklahoma around recreational paddlefish. I mean, it's an awesome resource if you just want to like sign up and give it a try. That's a great way to go about it too. So at any rate, that's
it is pretty spectacular that in Oklahoma we have this world-class fisheries, and we've even had the world record a couple times.
That's one of the things we talk about. If I take somebody fishing for paddlefish, I'm going to start with we have what we believe to be the world premier population and recreational opportunities for paddlefish. There are other states that allow paddle fishing, but there are no stories out of those states like me and my buddies. There are no stories like 2-time world record holder, like a week apart.
Right.
There are no other stories or backed up by the kinds of research that we have, the data banks that we have that show what our populations are.
For sure.
From years and years and years of studying these populations. And that's amazing. I mean, to be number one in the world in anything is cool,
right.
But it's especially cool when it's a really cool fish like this paddlefish.
Oh, these fish are so cool. Their morphology is just insane to me. And it's the only species of paddlefish in the world, and we have it in Oklahoma. And that's just blows my mind, honestly.
What about some of the other cool things? And of course, you being a fisheries technician, you're going to be able to explain this better than I can probably. Talk about the fish itself a little bit.
Oh, yeah. So this fish has this long, what a lot of people will refer to as the bill or paddle. It's a rostrum, and you'll see little dots around it, and that's for those are little electroreceptors so that they can find their primary food source, which is zooplankton. Just tiny little microscopic things feeds this massive fish. And those little sensors are called ampullae of Lorenzi, and that is how they actually find all of their food and prey. And it's just spectacular. If you look at the skeleton of their rostrum, it's a bunch of tiny little star-shaped bones just interconnected, making like a little lattice work to actually build a pretty durable structure.
I think it's really cool that those electroreceptors are actually sensitive enough to detect the movement of appendages in the zooplankton.
It's so neat.
So already a microscopic, food source, they can detect something that's inside of that. I think we can accredit a lot of our awesome paddlefish resource to our fisheries team and our biologist here. We got a picture of Taylor here helping out with the CWT tags that go into the rostrum of all of our hatchery-raised paddlefish.
Yeah, here I was at the Tishomingo National Fish Hatchery, and they put tiny itty-bitty pit tags at the tip of all the rostrums on these so that later when they're caught, you can scan it and tell what year class that fish was from. And it gives us a little bit of age growth data and kind of helps us tell how the fish are doing and the populations are being managed.
Yeah, go ahead.
And those tags you're talking about are like the same kind of tag that you might put in your dog if you were going to have to track them for the whole of their lifetime, right? You can't really see them. The angler
oh no,
won't
they're
ever
so
know
tiny.
They're in there, but they are in there, and then you can wand them and beep.
Yeah.
So I actually got to go out with the paddlefish research team a couple weeks ago and do some netting research. So it was really interesting seeing how we pull in these paddlefish and kind of the process that our biologists go through to understand not only population health data, but also like just population data in general. So we tag every paddlefish that we catch on the research boat. And that helps the biologists come up with a number and how we determine our regulations. I think it's just...
And that's with that one's with a actual band, I guess.
Yes, sir. So that would be this band here you see on the lip of the paddlefish on the lower jaw. It's a metal band, doesn't rust, doesn't harm the paddlefish in any way. That allows our biologists that when we go do that netting and we recapture a paddlefish with a band, it helps us understand, the breeding cycle and their reproductive rates once they get older as well. I just think it's awesome. We have a great biology staff.
Really, it's awesome.
So let's go into a little bit of like your favorite way to catch them.
Sure. Yeah. I appreciate I love to cast and and sweep, cast and sweep, cast and sweep. That's like the old school method. That's pretty much what was done back in the day, and mostly because people were fishing off the bank. So you just cast it out and you literally pull it through the water, and then as you're pulling it through the water, you hit the fish and it takes off. And we took that method and put it in a boat because after we started doing a lot of the bank fishing, I realized, and other people too were starting to realize, man, these fish are all up and down some of these river systems, and you don't just have to try to catch them at the park. When they're in the park, they might be a mile downriver, like right now, instead of at the park. So we got into the boat thing, but we took that method, and in my opinion, it's a more direct and hands-on than trolling, for example. Trolling's another common method that's used today, and it is very effective. It's probably more effective than the casting method. Not probably, assuredly. Especially with the guys that spend a lot of time on the water and have perfected the techniques.
Yeah.
Right.
So they can look at a graph and say these paddlefish are at 20 feet, and if we put out this much line, if we troll at this speed, the hook is going to be at 20 feet, and we won't have to do it very long, and boom, you hooked up to a fish.
Right.
Now, whenever all your gear and your rod setups, like how exactly do you have that all set up when you're fishing from the boat with that sweeping motion?
Yeah, it's the same for boat or bank. It's kind of the same setup, but we use spinning tackle a lot, like spinning reel, and generally like a longer rod. I mean, I'm a fan of 10 and 11 foot rods. 8 and 9s they're effective when the paddlefish are highly concentrated.
Right.
But a longer rod provides for a longer sweep, and it provides for more efficiency. So like if the fish are scattered or they're not in there in a particular place in high numbers, then a higher length of rod is going to get you more hookups.
Right.
So a 12-foot rod is going to get you generally more hookups than an 11 more than 10. Some folks can use, if you're able to, use a 14-footer.
Oh, wow.
It's really shooting fish in a barrel, because you got a sweep that's just it's just more efficient. But and then we tie a hook. Our hook is anywhere from 1 to 2 feet above a weight, and that weight could be a 3, 4, or 5 ounce sinker, depending on depth and current. You kind of want to match the depth and current. You want something that's going to get down to the bottom and then come back to the boat without getting like totally blown down river, but also without like snagging everything. So
Gotcha.
Those are things that you pick up on as you do it a little bit.
For sure. So when you're, say, fishing from the bank, I'd like 2 answers here if possible. So from the bank and then from the boat, what kind of do you look for in each scenario on like a good spot to go and try and snag for a paddlefish?
Good questions. So the bank is a little bit easier to answer, because typically in the places where people bank fish, it's in a very specific location that is a hole or a bend in the river. It's a place that is when the fish are there. Traditionally, the fish are there.
Gotcha. Like the Miami City Park.
Like at the city park, like at Connors Bridge, which is another famous landmark where they snag a lot of paddlefish from the bank. And when the fish are there, the fishermen will be there generally, and they will be catching fish. So when you see that, I would just encourage people to be respectful about if you're fishing right here, I don't elbow you out of the way to get your spot after you hook one.
Does that get kind of complicated with the big sweeping motions? And
yeah, you got to there's got to be a little space there for everybody to kind of do their thing.
Right.
But the folks that do a lot of the bank fishing, hey, it's a fun, a lot of times appreciate other people coming and have fun, and it's kind of some camaraderie there.
Oh, that's wonderful.
And stuff. And so, but in that boat situation, it is a little bit different. My method for the casting and sweeping, the fish have to be pretty concentrated for you to have a pretty decent chance of hooking one.
Right.
Now, the folks that do the trolling, they can get by with fish being a little bit more scattered because they're moving faster, they're covering water. They're not actually, they're just, the rods are set up to just come behind the hook, come behind the boat as they're trolling.
Right.
Typically, I will look at known areas that I have had experience finding fish, and if I find a pod of paddlefish or a group that seems big enough, then I will get off to the side, one side or the other, and try to cast to them and see if there's enough there that I can get some hookups.
And you're talking about when they're grouping together and kind of schooling. Can you explain a little bit about what time of year this happens?
Yeah. So it's typically in the spring where we see the fish come out of the lakes and go up into the rivers and go up into the river systems in an attempt or in a position to get ready to actually spawn. And that typically happens when there's some flow. So the fish are down in the lake all winter, all summer, all winter. And then as we get into spring, typically March and April, but you can have good paddlefish conditions even as early as February at times. And then also as late as into May. We've had some real great trips in May, but typically it's March and April. And then you get a big rain, especially a warm rain, and the fish will make a run up into the rivers, and then they shake out into some of the places where there's deeper holes and kind of wait for the next push to, they're just getting ready to do their thing. And that's where we tend to concentrate on them with the casting method, because you do have some limitations there.
Yeah.
The trolling stuff, they control them all the way back to the lake before they ever even think about leaving the lake. And they're catching them in 80 feet of water in Grand Lake. Right now today in February, I guarantee you there's somebody on Grand Lake catching paddlefish trolling,
for sure,
using dipsy divers. And
that or electronics have come a long way. Fishing is concerned.
Yep.
I've seen videos of guys using front-facing sonar and just casting out, like you said, 80 foot of water, however deep, and it's crazy.
One thing too we might mention, we've been talking about setup and how to do it, and even trolling. Did of course mention there are some rules that we have in place to preserve and to make sure we're not impacting the population, and one of those is you get one hook. It's not like you can have a string of 10 hooks back there. You get one treble hook or up to a treble hook, and the hook itself has to be barbless. And
very important.
Yeah.
Right.
As much as we love our game wardens, they will write you a ticket for that.
And that's because we have current regulations that allow you to do catch and release. We have lots of previous catch, capture, and track studies that suggest, if done in a responsible manner, i.e. barbless hooks and limited handling of the fish and proper release, these fish can be caught over and over again. They're a very tough fish.
For sure.
Speaking of handling, if you're catching and releasing, there's a certain way you need to handle these fish, isn't there?
Yeah, we do encourage people, when you're handling the fish, cradle the fish, try to support the fish, try not to. There are ways to handle using the rostrum and pieces of gill hold that allow you to get the thing into the boat.
Right.
But then from then on, they're even though they're a big tough creature, you want to minimize contact with any of the gills. They can be damaged, and that's where they that's
Have
where
their
they
gill rakers and
I threw up a quick picture here of kind of just an easy way to hold them once you get them in the boat. Really support that stomach. That's where a lot of their weight is.
and the gills and the gill rakers mentioned. That's where they make a living.
Yeah.
That's
Right.
where they're straining out these zooplanktons from the water, and so if those start getting damaged or hurt, then that can impact their ability to grow and successfully survive. So,
And if you are harvesting these fish, we do have regulations on how much you can take in a year, annually, and in a day. So for any one day, you can only harvest 1 paddlefish a day and 2 annually if you are doing that. And that's really important because these are long-lived fish.
For sure.
And it takes them several years to even reach breeding age.
yeah, you're looking at like a decade-ish for the fish to even like make it into the spawning population. And I mentioned the 1 a day. So the way the rule reads, you can snag and release and snag and release and snag and release. When you decide this is my 1 fish I would like to keep today, you have to quit snagging.
Yep.
You can
in case there's some harm to that fish.
you've kept one, and that's your
Right.
limit for the day. So you can pick up a sand bass pole while your friends continue trying their snagging to catch their 1 fish a day if that's what they're wanting to do. But you cannot go back to snagging after having kept one
Glad you mentioned that.
for that
sure.
day. Next day you can start over, of course, up to 2 a year, like you said.
I think another cool thing that about the paddlefish a lot of people don't really know about is like the sturgeon, they carry a lot of caviar.
That was something that we had. It's kind of one of the kind of fundamental points that when we got started doing research, and part of this came from many years ago, there was a very expensive market on caviar, and through a series of world events, the best caviar, the sturgeon caviar from the Caspian Sea, all that, they had population crashes and overfishing and just all kinds of problems. American paddlefish caviar is the #1 substitute, like in terms of quality. And at the time, it was not very widely available, and these making caviar out of this paddlefish was something that was happening illegally, and there was a massive black market for paddlefish caviar.
Wow.
One of the things that our agency decided to do, again, this is going back nearly 20 years now, but we wanted to do more and better research on these fish. And one of the key things you do is you can survey their jaw bones, take a slice like a tree, count the rings on growth rings for age and growth. But you're killing a fish when you do that. You can't cut their jaw and then age them and then throw them back. But what we did know was, like at Miami Park and like at Grand Lake, there were all these people that were already fishing and already catching and keeping paddlefish because it was fun and they wanted to do it, and it was this booming fishery. And we thought, because there were other states that were doing something similar, we thought we could try a program here where we allowed the angler to bring us the fish. We would clean it for them. Then we would give them back their cleaned fillets, and we would do all the research on it, but we would also go ahead and have a contract with somebody to process the caviar, and then we would sell it as a means to invest back in our management and research and protection of our recreational fishery.
Right. So that was called the PRC, if I'm correct, the Paddlefish Research Center.
Right.
And then is that still a part of our department, or have we kind of...
So there was a period there for a decade or so where that was very successful in both in terms of the research aspect and in terms of providing some conservation funding. Like every single dollar we raised from Paddlefish Caviar went into management, research, protection, promoting fishing. I mean, that the money was used on the resource and to try to encourage people to be able to use a resource.
Right.
Again, series of world events. The price of paddlefish caviar has dramatically gone down. Really, it's very cheap now. It's produced very cheaply. The China has done a lot of things with farming of paddlefish, American paddlefish, in their lakes to produce caviar and produce it in large quantities, which floods the market and all those kinds of things, that's neither here nor there. But from our standpoint, we felt like our program, the research part, had kind of run its course for what we needed for the Grand Lake system. Most extensive data set on paddlefish of anywhere in the country.
That's impressive.
Wow.
But we have paddlefish at all these other reservoirs and river systems that were not getting hardly any study because all of our assets, all of our people, biologists, equipment was at this one place.
Right.
So the agency made the decision, we're going to shutter the caviar portion and pivot on the focus on research to some of these other lakes that had populations of paddlefish that are coming on or that were in need of potentially restocking or rebuilding. Texoma comes to mind. We've been trying to, that's a reservoir system that's could potentially have some of the same kinds of fisheries that we have in other places, but needs help to get back and get a jump start, right? So all of that to say, it's been now 3 years since we made the decision. We're going to put our assets and provide some additional focus on places like Oologah Lake, which has a great paddlefish population. Eufaula, like you're starting to hear reports out of Eufaula, but we started with some stockings a decade ago at Eufaula. And now it's time to do research and to do netting and to do the kinds of things that we were doing in the Grand system.
That's great, though. I like that it's getting spread out across the state. It'd be a lot better big picture of our fisheries.
Absolutely, because we have the capability to have some of the similar kind of fisheries that we have at Grand Lake, world class, like some of the best fishing in the world. But we could also have that at Kaw and Oologah and Eufaula and Texoma, and we do need the additional research though to figure out is it some of the stuff that we have gotten started on some of these other places, is it working, and if not, how can we tweak it to make it work even better?
For sure. I think part of that importance is if you do catch a paddlefish that has a tag, report that to our biologist and then don't remove that tag. I know a lot of hunters like to hunt tagged ducks and tagged geese, and that's a little different. But with these paddlefish, to continue our research and to help keep producing the quality and numbers of paddlefish that we have, it's important not to remove those tags and try to keep those paddlefish in the system.
And I think there is something on the website, right, that allows people to go on there and say, this is where I was, this is the tag number, you can write it down. And then, of course, if you are fishing to catch one and keep one, same deal. You can, in that case, you're going to get to keep the tag, but you can turn it in just like you would if you released the fish, like where it was that it was caught. Any other information, I think there's a form you fill out.
Yeah, there is. And it just kind of asks, like Jacob was saying, if you catch it, if you're not harvesting it, just keep the tag on it. You can report it, but...
Yeah, I think it's... definitely important to note that our website is a great resource.
It really is.
So like you were mentioning, when you're fishing for paddlefish, you have to tie the hooks a certain way. We have all these resources on our website and on our YouTube channel that show you how to tie these hooks, how to rig up a snagging setup, etc. So
when you also mentioned that,
sir.
You can sign up for our fishing report through our website.
Right.
Like that's kind of step one, like get signed up for our weekly fishing report. and you start looking through there, and you'll see where we talk about, especially as we get into March and April, different lakes, paddlefish, moving into the rivers, or paddlefish are great at Miami Park, or paddlefish are we're starting to see paddlefish. So that can kind of also keep you posted on what's going out out there.
For sure. Shout out to all of our game wardens who submit those reports every week, because we couldn't do those without them.
And some biologists do it.
Yeah, and the
Some
biologists.
biologists.
So, let's see. What else we got? Some fun facts about the paddlefish we can go through. They have existed since the Cretaceous period. So that was over 125 million years ago. They're probably one of the oldest fish species that we still have around.
Yeah, their closest living relative is the sturgeon.
Right.
So, very primitive fish.
China had a large population of Chinese paddlefish at one point. Those have since gone extinct to human knowledge. So now the last surviving paddlefish species is the American paddlefish.
Yeah.
Let's see. Their taste can often be compared to swordfish. I've never had swordfish, so I don't.
So I would just add to this. I have had swordfish. The texture is very similar to swordfish.
Gotcha.
Okay.
There is a way to help with taking out some of the flavor. Like they have a strong flavor. Just like you fillet one off, and here it is. It's got a strong flavor. And there's different methods that people use, soaking them in buttermilk or doing different things to kind of remove some of that strong. Yeah, some would say gaminess. But the texture of the meat is different than it is similar to swordfish than like walleye or crappie or catfish. So
For sure.
and it's one I when I take folks fishing, and if they want to keep one, I encourage people, hey, if you haven't tried it, you should try it. We'll clean it. I'll help you clean it. There's also, as you're mentioning, there is a very specific way to clean these things. And you can look that up, Google it or whatever to see the procedure.
Right.
But try it. You owe it to yourself to at least try it, and then let each person make their own decision. I like catch and release myself, but
Is that just so you can keep fighting more and more of them?
I love blue cat. I love crappie, walleye, saw guy. I mean, I'm kind of a, I guess, fish snob when it comes to eating fish. I mean, I just said this that's. But there are some people that love it. They do it grilled, smoke it. That's another popular way to get the stuff. But there's people that love tomatoes. I don't like tomatoes.
Right.
So,
You think it's like just a real acquired taste for this?
I mean, I think different people have different tastes, and kind of like the tomato thing. Like I don't like tomatoes.
I'm
or
with you on
really
the tomatoes.
Any vegetables. Like I don't like vegetables. I like meat, but not vegetables. So that's just me. Is that acquired? That weird? I don't know. Well, paddlefish the same way. I've got buddies. Oh man, that's great, man. Bring it on. Okay.
I do remember you coming into the break room the other day with a box full of fajitas, and you just picked around all of the vegetables.
Hey, yeah. And my mom hates it. She tried to make me eat, I don't know, spinach and stuff when I was 2, and I revolted. I've never forgot that. Like, right?
Scarred you.
I did. I don't have to do it now.
Right.
So
That's awesome. Yeah, go ahead, Taylor. Looked like you were about to.
Oh, I was just going to say, do you have any suggestions or tips that you would like to add for somebody just trying to get into it, like people they could talk to or?
yeah, I mean, I would say definitely some of the resources that we have, and including on the shows that we've done before, the Outdoor Oklahoma shows that are on the YouTube channel. Like you can literally watch some of this stuff and get a really good idea of how to do it. Then it's just a matter of getting hooked up with the equipment. And of course, there's a number of places you can go and get equipment. Also, talk around to your circle of friends and influencers, right? About, have you ever heard of anybody doing this? And you may find somebody that's like, oh yeah, I do that all the time. I mean,
For sure.
or I've done it. I've got some equipment. I could loan you the equipment, or we could circle a date on the calendar and go up there and have a fun weekend trying to catch one. And then, we do have a whole list on our website of licensed fishing guides. Fishing guides, sign up with us for a license, and we have a list of them and what lakes they fish and what species they fish for. And that's a resource. If you don't know how to do this and you haven't done it and you don't want to make an investment, you just want to try it, that's a great opportunity to go up there and try it. So those are all things I would recommend.
Most definitely. I think it's important to remember, I mean, kind of like we mentioned last episode with David, like fishing's not all about actually catching the fish.
Yeah.
Just that experience of like that memory you have of your very first time going to Miami Park, like surrounded by all these people and snagging your first paddlefish. Like that's got to be something that's just unforgettable.
And you're right. That was, I can remember it to this day. It was like back in the days, it was like a fishing carnival. Right. I mean, they had bonfires going and music playing. And I mean, It was like going to the state fair, only we were fishing. And that's a memory that I'll have forever. Sure. And lots of other memories of different trips where I went with friends and different people paddle fishing. And you're right. That's, I would encourage people to do if you find somebody that likes to paddle fish and you want to give it a try, hey, circle that date on the calendar and say, look, unless something comes up that's an emergency, we're going and we're going to go try it. And what's the worst that can happen? We don't catch one. I mean, what's the best that could happen?
Yeah.
We get a t-shirt, like we're so wore out we can't even eat lunch, right? After we
it's good exercise too, right?
After we get done reeling all those paddlefish in.
That's funny. Well, that is going to bring us to the end of today's episode of Real Talk, Real Tips. Thank you, Nels, for joining us today.
Thank you.
This episode is brought to you by the Oklahoma Department of Wildlife Conservation. I hope you enjoyed this discussion. Be sure to check out the last episode on wintertime catfishing with David Banna. That was a really good one. This was awesome. Assistant Director Rodefeld, thank you again for joining us. And
hey, thank you for having me.
It was a treat hearing about all this.
For sure.
Maybe we circle a date on the calendar to get you two up for some paddlefish, right?
Most definitely. So, all right, everybody, we'll catch you next time.